By the power of God, the bear conductor, and the oh fuck, what was the last one? Whatever. It came from the internet again after a hefty hiatus. I believe our last episode was in May or April, so we took an extended hiatus. But thankfully, we'll be back here soon with some other stuff. But in the meantime, to hold you over, we have yet another of Jerry Peet's peers who has come forward with some stories to tell. I have with me Brittany, also known as Thought Bubble. Uh, I guess introduce yourself.
Hello, I am, I'm Brittany. I am, if memory serves correctly, I was the first person in Pete's camp. Like, I was the start of his internet circle.
Hey.
Other than Ethan.
So I guess to sort of recap what we've covered on Jerry Pete previously, it's been kind of a while. So I think it'll be good to sort of start from the beginning here. But Jerry Pete is more or less a edgy My Little Pony commentator, I guess would be the best way to describe him. Uh, but also a chronic liar, a talking head, and a pedophile, amongst a
Mm,
myriad of other things, as we've come to
that's
discover here.
putting it that's putting it mildly, but yeah, pretty much. Also, I apologize in advance. There are people mowing outside, so you might hear a little bit of lawnmower in the background.
Oh, trust me, that's not the worst thing that's happened in the background on this stupid fucking show of ours. Jeez, sorry. I'm a little out of practice, so you'll have to give me a bit of a bit of slack here. I guess
I've
we'll
I've
just
only ever I've only ever done 2 interviews on this subject, so I can get those feels.
I guess I'll just sort of let you go, and I'll just sort of interject for anything that I think needs clarified. Um, but I guess start at the beginning. How do you know Jerry Pete?
Okay, well, once upon a time, there was a cringy teenager on the internet going through her creepypasta phase. And this cringy teenager on the internet was obsessed with the Lavender Town thing for a while. So she was looking up YouTube videos on it and stumbled across Ball Spawn.
Uh,
And this
Ballspawn
was
being
before,
Ballspawn being one of
yep,
Jerry Pete's original usernames. So you can confirm for us
yes.
that Jerry Pete is Ballspawn. I know for a while he was trying to hide behind that not being him, and we didn't really believe it. But you can,
Seriously?
yeah. There was a little while there where he seemed to hide behind his various usernames of like, is Ballspawn the username he uses to write his weird pedophile fanfics?
I'm not sure.
I'm
All I
pretty.
know is
I think it
Ballspawn
is.
was the name that I initially met them under, and that was the name they were going by on YouTube when they first started.
Right. Jerry definitely was, in order to sort of deflect the pedophilia accusations, tried to hide behind that not being him. He had been outed by an admin on a My Little Pony board, and he sort of hid behind them just being wrong. Um, I want to say Blake probably also confirmed that for me, but I guess now we have a second source that can confirm Ballspawn is one of Jerry's old usernames.
That's interesting. That had to have happened right after we lost touch. Because as far as I was aware, they never attempted to claim that that wasn't them, just that that wasn't who they were anymore.
This was never like a super public thing. It was always like on Jerry's Tumblr, someone had asked him, and he sort of shrugged it off as being like, "That's not even me. I've never gone by that name." Um,
Hmm. Well,
it's
yeah, I'm here to tell you that's a bold faced lie because that's the name I met them under.
fantastic. Please continue.
I'm trying to remember just the chronological order of things, because in the beginning it wasn't really, super eventful. It was just I had messaged them on YouTube after watching a few of their videos, asking about or suggesting an idea that they could do for a video, and that didn't end up happening. But we ended up talking on Skype a lot and becoming really close friends. And I know they've probably got a lot of cringe-tastic shit on me as well, because I was a teenager on the internet. And I'm sure most of us, when we were teenagers on the internet, have done things and rolled with things that we're not proud of. I don't know. It's just some of the wilder shit that they had me believing for a while was just insane. Like with the whole Tara fiasco. I'm pretty much Pete's patient zero. I was the first person in their internet circle to meet them. I was before Blake. I was before they even got into My Little Pony. I was about the only person that was before me was Ethan, and quote unquote Tara.
That's something worth noting is before you got into My Little Pony. So was the show around at this point, or does this actually just predate the show's premiere at all? Is this like
I believe it was when the show. It was after the show had come out, but it was right around the time it started really taking off in popularity. So this was super early on.
All right. So I guess rather than going chronologically, I guess just sort of go where you think, just sort of go where whatever sticks out to you most about Jerry. What made you so interested in kind of coming out, I suppose, against him, more or less?
Well, that one, I'd actually been watching their channel for a little while after we had our final falling out. And I was honestly hoping that maybe, they were just turning over a new leaf and trying to distance themselves from everything in their past and were just going to become a totally different person. I admit I am a little bit of an idealist, and obviously that didn't happen. And it wasn't until Josh Scorcher made his video talking about all the crap that he'd had to put up with from them that I was like, okay, are they really starting to spread this asshole chronic liar to their fans and colleagues now? And then I saw Blake's video, and then I saw a bunch of other people in the Brony analyst community kind of speaking out against them. And I was just kind of like, well, I guess my time has come. Because I started, doing more research into what else people knew at that point, because I haven't talked about any of this before now. I've been out of the YouTube community, was never really in the YouTube community. I've been out of the Brony analyst scene for a while. I haven't been watching anybody. And then that happened, and I started looking him up, found the lolcow thread, found the Encyclopedia Dramatica page, and I was just surprised that other people had figured all this stuff out, and it was just rumors at that point. And I'm here to tell you, I was there for all of it. And I have conversations that I know can't be posted on YouTube, but I have conversations confirming all of it. I was an eyewitness to all of it. Everything from the Tara fiasco to the Blake Diamond fiasco to the bestiality, the pedophilia, the weird fanfics, the incest video that they did way back in their RVI days. I witnessed this.
Real quick, I want to touch on basically all of that stuff. Even if we're covering the same ground, I'd like to get it from your perspective. What's the incest video? Because I'm not sure I've heard this one yet.
The incest video was basically their way of trying to defend incestuous relationships within certain parameters. Like, basically, they were saying if it's two consenting adults, then they should be allowed to do whatever they want. But they were also trying to defend the fact that, throwing out statistics on, the likelihood of children coming out of those situations and how likely they are to actually have genetic defects and all this other stuff. Basically, it was an in-depth look at the ethics of incest from their perspective, obviously.
Interesting. So I guess let's go back to the Tara situation, because that's one that I feel has maybe not misinformation, but a lot of ambiguity to it. Um, from what I know of it, the facts I know of it is Jerry Peet for a long time had a girlfriend named Tara something or another.
Tara Callie.
Tara Callie, uh, who was completely fictitious, and
Yep.
in his weird narrative, she was like in an incestuous relationship with her sister and died on her way to Canada, but then didn't die, but then died again.
Okay, no, that one I can clarify. And for the longest time, I wasn't sure if Tara existed. I had my suspicions, but I didn't have any proof one way or the other until all this stuff blew up and I started putting more and more of the pieces together. And now I can definitively say that she doesn't exist. As for the whole sister story, the way that went was, yeah, she supposedly had a sister that she was in a sexual relationship with, and her parents caught them, which is why she ended up moving to Canada in the first place. And at one point, that sister tried to run away from Colorado and travel to Canada by herself and froze to death. She also claimed to have a brother that she was also in a sexual relationship with who died in the military. Didn't specify whether it was the Canadian or US military. The part about dying and then coming back, that was actually supposedly Tara. Tara had supposedly been hit by a car and was in the hospital and had died. And a lot of people got upset about it. And suddenly she came back to life and was like, oh, I'm not actually dead. The hospital just preemptively told everybody that I had died because they didn't think I was going to make it. So she came back for a little while longer. And the next story that Pete kind of spread around was that she had been arrested for sexually assaulting a minor and for having a bunch of child pornography on her computer. And Pete actually asked me whether or not I thought that they should go over to Tara's house and delete the child pornography from her computer before the cops could see it. I told her no. And apparently after that, Tara was arrested and thrown into a Canadian federal prison where nobody would ever see her again. Now, if that part of the story wasn't a little out there enough, Pete went a step further and claimed that they had gone to that federal prison where the guards allowed them to beat the crap out of Tara. And they supposedly also met one of Tara's child victims.
So, real quick, something that I've always sort of assumed, but maybe I wasn't 100% sure on. Was Jerry selling Tara Callie as his, girlfriend? Was it like a known thing that they were like together?
For the most part, yeah. It was well known within the inner circle that they were in a romantic relationship, which didn't make any damn sense to me because at the time, Pete was claiming that they were asexual, whereas Tara Callie was a raging nymphomaniac. So there was this weird sort of almost abusive, twisted thing going on between the two of them.
That's incredibly weird, because if you're going to fabricate a girlfriend, why would you fabricate her to be cheating on you with her siblings?
No, the siblings thing happened before her and Pete supposedly got together. She hadn't had contact with her siblings in, I don't know, years.
Okay, because I was under the assumption that, like, she had been caught with her sister actively, and that's why she sort of ran off.
No, the story goes that when she was younger, her and her sister got caught together. So she ran off to Canada, where she then met Pete.
Okay, and she was living and the idea was, like, she was in Canada for a long chunk of time?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there was also a period where she supposedly worked for the Canadian government, was on a first-name basis with the former prime minister, and at one point was sent to Greece to be some sort of ambassador. So basically, toward the end of Tara's lifespan, if you could call it that, the stories just got more and more ridiculous and out there and less believable.
And the car accident that killed her off, that was just a random incident. It wasn't. I was always under the impression it happened while she was crossing into Canada. This is
no, it was just a random incident.
Just an act of God.
Yeah, I think I'm wondering if Pete was trying to figure out a way to get rid of her without exposing the fact that she was fake. So she was trying out all these different stories.
Why didn't he just have them break up?
Because she still would have been in his life. In fact, I think they did break up at one point, but they were still quote unquote friends.
Jesus Christ.
So basically, I think Pete, this is speculation, but I think Pete was trying to find a way to get rid of her that wouldn't also upset the fan base that they had at that point.
What a fucking teenage girl. Like, you're gonna fucking, well, I gotta get rid of my imaginary girlfriend. I guess I'll just have her run over by a car. That's the easiest way.
Right.
I will say, though, that might have been smart, because I'm in the middle of researching another YouTuber for the podcast where this more or less happened. In real life, he broke up with his girlfriend, and it destroyed his channel's momentum. So he may have been smart to do that, but as I'm saying that, it implies that he had momentum at some point, which I'm not sure he did.
I mean, not really, not with his RVI stuff. The momentum didn't start happening until Glass of Water started taking off, and that's around the time we lost touch.
So do you know anything about, like, even if you weren't directly in contact with him, did you see anything about Glass of Water's rise to popularity? Because I feel like that's something that's largely untouched upon, just because I find a lot of people who are sort of in the circles that are talking, that are doing all the legwork on Jerry Pete aren't really in the My Little Pony community. So they weren't really there to give firsthand accounts on some of that stuff.
Honestly, I didn't really pay too much attention to their channel after Glass of Water started taking off. But one thing I did notice was they were trying to break into the scene. They were, talking to a lot of different YouTubers that already had a following, such as Josh Scorcher. She actually had a little bit of a crush on Josh Scorcher in the very beginning, before they officially started talking and becoming friends. Like, she would gush about him to me all the time. And I guess she started making friends within the community, and then she started playing with the gender of her puppet, and that's when her popularity really started taking off. And it was a little bit before she officially came out as transgender and started using her first humanoid puppet, that we had our final fight and just stopped talking to each other.
So that's around where I started to meet Jerry Peet was around the time that he used the human puppet. As I understand it, uh, well, maybe not. I was gonna say like if you have like the horse avatar, no one can really tell your gender. But I guess they are kind of sexually dimorphic. Like their heads kind of look differently.
Yeah, that's how you can tell.
So
The
I guess you could, if you're playing to that fan base, they would know that you were a quote unquote girl.
Yeah, in fact, that's a lot of people started asking questions about why the puppet was uh, drawn on as a female, and for a while he denied it and just said, "Oh, it was a mistake of the artist and all this other stuff." But Pete kind of strung his fans along for a little bit and played it up as to, "Oh no, I'm not really not supposed to be female. It's just think of me as a male and blah blah blah." And then eventually she started using a female human puppet to make people even more suspicious. And then they finally made the video officially coming out as trans.
I will say this in defense of Jerry Pete's point, and to make me sound like the biggest retard in the world, I do think the men ponies look really retarded. They look weird.
They do look a little odd. They have
They look
very square faces.
they kind of look like Lego versions of My Little Ponies. Just want that to sink in a little bit for the listeners at home. If me crying about the Digimon movie wasn't pathetic enough, here's me critiquing the men in My Little Pony for you. Drink it in, boys.
I think they were trying to do something that kind of reflected the male ponies from way back in Generation 1. Because they looked a little bit weird too, and that's where they got the kind of Clydesdale look around their feet.
I don't want to get too far away from GIP, but there's something I'm curious about. Is there like an equivalent of people in My Little Pony who like really resent the newer stuff, who only like the old stuff, like in Pokemon?
So far, no. Other than G3, G3 is universally considered one of the worst generations. But for the most part, no. People don't. There's not really a huge fan base for the original pony line.
That's disgusting. Who are you who don't know your history? To come back to Jerry, did he ever express insecurity with his voice? Uh, for everything you can say about Jerry, that he's greasy and spindly, that he has hair like a rat. He has a very masculine voice. He actually has a very good speaking voice. Did he ever express like wanting to make it more feminine to better reflect himself, or like? I know you said he kind of strung his fans along with the trans thing, but like behind the scenes, was he more open about wanting to be a woman, or did you bow out before any of that really took place?
Funny story. It was actually the opposite. When I first met him, her, whoever, they were the biggest cynical asshole you will ever meet in your life. Like, they were basically the opposite extreme of what they are now. They didn't believe in being transgender. They didn't believe in anything associated to gender identity. They barely believed in mental illnesses. Like, they hated the practice of psychology and all this other stuff, which there's actually a video, one of their old videos on Daily Motion, where they actually admitted that quote unquote psychiatry is a profession I have no respect for.
This is eerily
So it was
similar to Andrew Blaze, another person we've covered on the podcast who you might have heard of. He was the Danny Phantom killer, that dude who shot up a supermarket for his Danny Phantom OC a couple of months ago.
I hadn't heard about that.
There's a whole episode on it. On It Came from the Internet. You can check that out.
I might have to do that. To be honest, I just now got back into your podcast. I went looking for your Pete episodes and your interview with Blake.
That first Jerry Pete episode's a little rough.
But no, I was actually the one that kind of put the idea in their head that they might be transgender, which I'm regretting the shit out of at this point. Because they had a crush on me. Like a raging, full-on crush on me. And that was part of why Tara became such a big deal within the group again, because he was kind of using Tara as a way to get close to me sexually, and apparently close to Blake sexually.
Yeah,
Some
of the stuff Blake said is it's pretty out there.
Yeah, I can confirm the same thing happened to me. There was a point in time where I was, being my cringy teenage self, and I was trying to get past this old trauma that I have that makes it really hard for me to be, that way around men. And Pete, in their infinite compassion, was attempting to help me get over that by letting me watch them strip on camera. I didn't know about like the story that they gave Blake and the story they gave me just sounds like whatever we wanted to hear that could potentially let them strip on camera. Because from what I understand, Blake's side was they used the fact that they were trying to practice for cam whoring for money. And on my side, they used, I'm just trying to help you get past this trauma that you have from childhood. So basically they were saying whatever they thought would get us to let them do that.
So, something that brings up is when with Blake's story, it does read as just tone deaf, of just someone incredibly awkward trying to be very very sexual with a friend, maybe trying to bridge the gap from friend to lover or whatnot. With yours, it takes on a much darker tone. It's very predatory.
Yeah, they definitely were.
To sort of exploit the issues and insecurities of a friend for your own sexual gratification, and it turns what was an isolated incident with Blake into a pattern. Now they're starting to form an MO of Jerry, for some reason, wanting to strip tease for people. I don't know why. Strip teasing's like the least sexual thing you can do with your clothes off. It's not that great. I don't know why he would have such an obsession with it. But it does paint Pete as a predator rather than merely, a dude who makes shitty videos on the internet. The stuff
they
with Tara
definitely
Cali is
they used Tara Cali as a way to be sexually predatory as well. It got to the point where it was straight up sexual harassment.
Yeah,
and
I've seen
and like
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off here.
You're good.
I've seen stuff like this before where people will sort of take up a partner to use as a buffer. In a very weird way, Tara Cali was kind of a beard, even though he wasn't using it to hide that he was gay or anything. But he was using it as a way to sort of mask him sort of moving in on you and presumably Blake at the same time, which in some ways is more insidious.
I think Tara was a projection of everything that was actually going on in their head at the time, that they either didn't want to admit to themselves or they didn't want anybody to know was actually them. Because some of the stories that involved Tara were just... I like to think of myself as a really go-with-the-flow type person. Like, you do you as long as you're not hurting anybody. But with Tara, like, she went even beyond my levels of understanding. There was the dead sister thing, there was a dead brother thing, there was the sexually predatory nature. Like, basically, she was as bad as the fanfics of theirs that have floated around, like Stockholm Syndrome and a mommy's love, whatever that one was called.
Stockholm's the only one that I know of. That one and the Pokemon one and the Family Guy one, which I just think is really funny.
See, I never knew about the Pokemon one. The Family Guy one I knew about, but they kind of sort of brought that up as a sort of, this is where I started and it's horrible and bad and Stockholm is where I'm at now kind of thing.
So, I mean, he graduated from bestiality to pedophilia, and in his world, that was a step up.
I guess so.
It's everything Jerry Peet seems to do just perplexes me more, because he's taken what I feel like in the last few years, which in many ways is somewhat uncharted territory with the interviews, because most people have abandoned Pete before he really hits popularity, before he really comes into the limelight of groups like Kiwi Farms and 8chan.
Mm-hmm.
But he takes on such a strong stance of a moral authority, especially now that we live in Trump's America. He is very very. I'm trying to find the exact word for it here.
Extreme.
Extreme's definitely a good way. He's very black and white, and he's very, in many ways, violent with his dissenters, and much of that is being hyperbolic. But then he'll also turn right around and admonish guys like Trump or admonish the alt-right for being aggressive. I've not checked in on Jerry Peet in quite a while. I actually have not checked with Kiwi Farms regularly for basically all the summer. I was working pretty heavily this summer.
Yeah, I just started checking back on the thread about him on Kiwi Farms, and some of the screenshots that I've leaked have ended up on there. They've also ended up on their Encyclopedia Dramatica page. And there's a few things I want to clarify, because I think a lot of people are thinking that we had our final falling out just over the World of Warcraft incident, and that's not entirely true. That was just kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, because we'd been fighting pretty nonstop for quite a while leading up to that point, where I had just gotten out of a really emotionally abusive relationship, and I just moved back home. I was recovering from that, and I had started noticing some similarities from how Pete treated me in comparison to how my ex had treated me. And I started calling them out on a lot of shit. And they didn't like that. So it would start a bunch of fights between us where they would be trying to, beat me back down again, and then just being complete and total bitch to me. And the World of Warcraft incident, it was like a culmination of everything else we've been fighting about. Because she's sitting there claiming that she would try to talk to me and I wasn't responsive. The reverse is true. She would go into these manic depressive states, and for years I had dealt with her manic depressive states where I was calm, I was collected, I was supportive, and she treated me like a punching bag most of the time. And I got sick of it, and I realized, just because you're going through this and it's a rough time doesn't give you the right to just blatantly take it out on me. You can vent to me all you want, and I'll be here and I'll listen. But don't treat me like crap just because you feel bad right now.
So I'm actually checking the thread right now. For anyone unfamiliar, Brittany recently did another interview with a more ingrained member of the My Little Pony community for no good reason, who most of you might remember from the Mr. Medicare's diaper jihad fiasco. And Jerry Peet has done some responding to that on his Tumblr. So I have some of these here that I'd like to read verbatim and sort of let you respond to in real time if you'd like.
Oh, please do. I just did one of these with FNGR again.
Real quick, can you confirm like something real fast? I don't know if he did this while you guys were pals, but did he have like a lot of sock puppets on Tumblr that he would use to ask himself questions?
I've never been on Tumblr for any length of time, so I'm not entirely sure. But I know there were rumors where he had sock puppets where he would argue with and give himself praise on fan fiction websites. So just based on that and the Terra Cali incident, it wouldn't surprise me.
I would love for someone to come forward and give some legitimate proof of all his sock puppets, because the same like 6 people ask him shit on Tumblr and they all write exactly like him. And it would just be it would not be like the final nail in the coffin for him, but it'd be really fucking funny to finally be able to get confirmation on that. So here we go. Anonymous asks, what happened between you and the old friend? I want to make sure I'm reading these in the right order. Twitter's fucked me up because now I'm constantly worried that I'm reading things upside down.
Some of these I've seen already, so just go ahead and read them. I'll respond to them.
All right. Jerry, I was often trying to talk to her about personal issues I was having, and she would very frequently change the subject or just flat out go offline. She loved talking about her problems, but was always skittish when I needed someone to listen to me. Over several months, I grew increasingly short with her about this, and then she did it again when I was talking to her specifically about that problem. She just flat out went offline because the conversation was too much for her to handle. I honestly think that's the most inconsiderate thing to do, is to just go offline when someone needs your help and you don't feel like it. I get that connections get lost once in a while, but a consistent and predictable pattern reveals the selfishness behind it. At that point, I had a little Sadie Rager moment. That's probably some My Little Pony shit. I was specifically trying to talk to her about how I felt she was being extremely rude to me. And she just up and leaves, hoping I'll drop it. So I left a page-long reason you suck speech for her to see when she finally decided to come back on, and then cut her out of my life. Didn't hear anything from her after that.
See, that's also a bold-faced lie, because she's basing our entire interaction on the World of Warcraft incident. And I have screen...
What is the World of Warcraft incident?
Okay, so basically what happened was the thing that made us just stop talking to each other in general was I had expressed an interest in wanting to get into World of Warcraft because I've never played before. Let that sink in for a second. Our friendship died over a game that I don't play. So I told her I wanted, but at the time I had a really crappy computer that wasn't going to run it. I was saving up to get a new one. And I told her that. I was like, look, I just want to... And you talk to me about it all the time anyway, so just tell me some stuff about it. Well, instead of doing that, all she'd do was nag me about how I needed to just go ahead and install it right then and there. I needed to just try it. I needed to put it on my computer, blah, blah, blah. She was tired of waiting on me, all this other stuff. Basically, she was getting incredibly impatient and increasingly pushy. And eventually I got just tired of listening to her nag me about it. And one night I got on and I told her, I was like, look, there's some stuff I want to talk to you about. I don't know if you're going to listen to any of it. And she kept trying to vid call me and I didn't want to. And she was like, well, I've got about 30 minutes before I have to go to bed, and I'm scrubbing my PC over a dox attempt, and I guess that was when the whole pedophile gate opened up. And I was like, well, okay, just don't worry about it tonight. Because, I wanted to have an actual heart-to-heart discussion with her that I didn't feel like we could condense into 30 minutes. So I was like, okay, just don't worry about it tonight. We'll do it some other time. And she got pissed off, started nagging me again. She's like, no, you don't do it now. You don't do it ever, blah, blah, blah. I didn't feel like getting into a fight with her again, so I logged off. And when I logged back on, and these screenshots are on the QE Farms thread, she had sent me a bunch of messages like, oh, I dealt with this from Jen. I don't know who that is. I dealt with this from Blake. I dealt with it from Tara. I'm not going to do it with you. Yada, 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 just going off. She made a comment about my spiritual beliefs and my anxiety disorder, neither one of which had anything to do with why I didn't want to talk to her at that time. And then she started giving me a deadline. It's like, okay, you've got until this date at this time to come talk to me, or else you're out of my life. And then just a bunch of reminders of when that deadline was. And then I passed it, so her last message to me was time's up. And I was the one who sent the page-long reasons why you suck message and told her if she wanted to be in my life again, then she could contact me. And she never did. So basically, she told the quote-unquote true story. She just reversed the roles.
I'm reading through some more of these posts to see if there's anything particularly damning about them or anything particularly accusatory. A lot of them kind of retread old ground. Real fast. So you never actually did play World of Warcraft with Jerry at any point.
No, like I tried it for a couple days, but Pete wasn't involved in any way, shape, or form. Because at that point, who would want to play with somebody who just took all the fun out of the thought of playing in general?
Damn it. I was hoping you could maybe shed some light onto the supposedly Jerry and Tara Callie were playing at the same time. Blake had brought that up, and it was one of those threads that was hard to. It's like in a mystery where like you've got everything set, you know who the killer is, but there's like one thread there that you can't quite put together, and the game won't let you continue until you figure it out.
Yeah, I saw that in your interview with Blake, and I'd never played with them before, but just given how fervently Pete tried to keep Tara alive as a quote-unquote actual person, and how pissed off they would get when anybody suggested otherwise, there's no telling what lengths they went to keep that illusion going.
Let's. Sorry, I want to find another one of these at least. Let me go back a little further in this thread. I'll sort of leave it up to you. Is there another major Jerry Pete event that you wanna shed some light on?
To be honest, there's probably quite a few. I've been meaning to get back into my laptop and go through Skype and the YouTube inbox and everything and just compile as much shit as I can, screenshot-wise. But my laptop's dealing with a busted cooling system right now, so I haven't had a chance to get into it. But there's a lot of screens that confirm a lot of rumors that I'm planning to give to whoever wants them, because I know they can't be put on YouTube. I don't know what Tumblr's policy on it is, but they've ended up on ED and QE Farms and I believe LawCal. So I've got proof of most of what happened. and the fact that she's kind of panicking and not mentioning me by name at all and trying to make it seem like everything that happened between us was me doing it to her as opposed to her doing it to me is kind of cracking me up a little bit. As for, there was one incident that I wanted to bring up. Blake
Please,
Diamond.
Go ahead. Sorry, I'm sorry. I don't mean to leave you hanging here. I'm scouring through the thread as fast as I can, see if there's anything particularly that stands out here. But again, like anything you want to go for, just go for it.
Blake Diamond, when he was removed from the group, Pete had actually lied to me, and I believe Nintendo Gal as well, because they tried to say that Blake was becoming clingy and desperate and had a crush on him and all this other stuff. And we believed Pete because at the time we didn't have any proof that they were lying to us about all this shit because they were very good at keeping certain things in certain places. But basically, Pete did to Blake what they're doing to me now. They're telling the quote-unquote truth, but they're reversing roles. Where they were claiming Blake was becoming unstable and obsessive when the reverse was true.
The part
And I
about
didn't.
Blake having a crush on Jerry is very weird, because this all couldn't have happened that long ago. This couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, that's about the time frame.
And I know, like, Blake has a wife. She participates in his videos. But logically, like, even if they've only been together for half that time, he would have known her long before they actually got married. I would hope. So it seems bizarrely like wish fulfillment for him to turn around and be like, oh well, Blake had a crush on me and I didn't reciprocate, so that's why I cut him out of my life. When, you know, Blake's got a wife. Um, like,
Yeah,
what
I
does
mean,
Jerry really have?
Blake and I didn't do a whole lot of talking when he was part of the group because it was such a short span of time. But I didn't. The only part of the story I knew was Pete's side, where Blake was supposedly becoming unstable and obsessive and clingy and all this other shit. I didn't find out what had actually gone on between Pete and Blake until I found Blake's vlog explaining everything. And I was just shocked that I wasn't the only one that Pete had been sexually predatory toward.
That brings up something interesting. Obviously, you guys all know each other through Jerry. But were you guys ever close with each other? Not necessarily you and Blake specifically, but like, was the group just sort of a group of dudes that Jerry was in, or did you guys only really interact with each other like in response to Jerry?
We all interacted with each other in response to Jerry. Like Pete called it a production studio. They called it Valkyrie Studios, but we really weren't a production studio. There was really no speaking to each other within the group outside of Jerry. It was all just every once in a while Pete would ask one of us an opinion on a script, and sometimes we'd get into a Skype conversation that didn't go anywhere. But for the most part, we weren't a production studio. We were just a bunch of Pete's friends that kind of sort of talked to each other, but not really.
Huh.
It was, yeah, it was all just everything led back to Pete.
Did you ever? Was there any like? Did you ever feel like he was intentionally trying to like keep you guys separated? Like he didn't want you guys sort of menagering without him there?
Uh, It didn't really cross my mind at the time, but now that you mention it, kinda yeah, because whenever we would start talking to each other, something would happen, and either that person would be kicked out of the group, a la Blake, or that person wouldn't want to talk to the other person. There was a lot of rumors about each other that Pete spread to make sure that we just didn't have a desire to talk to each other.
That's extremely. I mean, it obviously goes without saying that that's a shitty thing to do, but it's very. I suppose insidious in a way, because as like understanding from you and Blake, um, and just like secondhand knowledge, it seems pretty obvious Jerry kind of built himself like a motley crew of people who were like in emotionally raw places, like people who were sort of reaching out for anyone to act as a support system.
We were pretty much a very, very small scale of what Pete has now.
It's it's very it's frankly very disgusting to sort of build a group of people who you kind of know, and there's no way he didn't know that these people are sort of emotionally unstable and really need a support group, and then to sort of intentionally uh,
Oh, of course they knew. We all
destabilize them,
confided in him.
and then like sort of intentionally destabilize the group to keep them dependent on you.
Yeah, we all confided in them because we considered them a friend. We all confided our deepest, darkest shit that we were dealing with.
Shit, I was gonna say
Oh, and
something, but I forgot what it was.
another interesting bit. I
Oh,
am,
go
you
ahead.
know,
Sorry.
I know Blake has mentioned in certain areas that I am rather left leaning. So, I've got the utmost support for the transgender community. I have many transgender friends. I love them to death. However, Lily is the only person that I've ever come across where I've had to stop and wonder, are they really trans? And not just from the fact that, you know, she knew that coming out as transgender would end up getting her more popularity, but because the fact that both people that she had true romantic feelings for throughout most of the time I knew her were lesbians, me and Nintendo Gal. And that's something that she confided in me, where she was getting frustrated that all the women that she ended up falling for were gay. And she started kind of using the possibility that she could be trans super early on as a way to get close to me. I don't know if she did the same thing to Nintendo Gal. Nintendo Gal and I never really spoke, so I have no idea what happened between them. I just know when it came to me, I kind of put the idea in her head that she might be trans because she had started trying to kind of turn the narrative in that direction anyway, where she was like, well, I don't believe in gender identity, and I believe you're just, born with whatever's between your legs and all this other shit, but I feel really feminine. And she started slowly acting more feminine, and she'd use Tara to kind of point out how feminine she was being one day and all this other stuff. And the
Uh,
more she pushed the issue, the closer
sorry,
she tried to get to me.
sorry. Give me just 1 second here.
Okay.
Come on, bud. All right, sorry about that.
You're good.
Uh, yeah, I was gonna bring that up. Jerry's trans status. Um, I find it's sort of a cliche at this point for a lolcow to be trans. But very few of them actually seem to have gender dysphoria. There's actually a comment here in the thread where Jerry specifically admonishes someone for telling him he doesn't have gender dysphoria. Um, with first of all, not every trans person experiences dysphoria, which is so like saying not every gay person is attracted to dick. It's kind of a prerequisite. Doesn't really work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't really give a shit if someone's transgender. As far as I'm concerned, whatever you want to do is totally up to you. Um, we have a transgendered on staff here at Random Assault Podcast, so you know, equal opportunity employer and everything. She actually makes more money than I do at the podcast. They give her a whole 2 cents a year, which I think is a
Oh,
little
dang.
unfair. But um, it's you see it in people like Jerry. Like maybe when he first comes out, it would make sense, but it's been like 3 fucking years, and the dude hasn't once tried to change his voice.
Well, it's when it comes to the dysphoria thing, or how they present themselves. That's not really what I'm getting at here. It's not why I'm questioning it. I'm more questioning the motives behind it. Because I have trans friends that experience various degrees of gender dysphoria, and some don't have it as bad as others. That's fine with me. It's just the fact that it's the motives behind it and the way they went about quote unquote discovering this is suspicious. Because you've got the fact that the people that they were emotionally attracted to were either lesbians or straight men. And you've got the fact that they knew as soon as they came out as transgender that they'd been, dangling in front of their fans for a while, that they would end up getting more momentum and popularity on their channel and on their Tumblr. And that's also kind of a way for them to use their whole moral high ground thing that they've been doing. So I'm asking the question, are they really trans because they feel trans? Or are they just saying they are to get attention and to get close to the people they want to get close to?
Sorry, sorry, my brother needed something real fast. Um, yeah, Jerry's turn to trans seems very, what's the word here? Convenient in some sense. He seems to, as the as the culture was kind of shifting to trans people being more in the spotlight, he very conveniently seemed to reveal himself as trans, and then, but never, not was diagnosed with gender dysphoria. There's certainly gradients to all illnesses. Um, like there's people say that autism is a spectrum, which it is, but just about every disorder is a spectrum. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. My dog's very cleaning right now. Obviously, all disorders are a spectrum, um, and so there's definitely a gradient of like some people experience dysphoria very intensely. Some people would probably be able to manage it without ever having to take hormones or anything. But Pete never comes at it like that. He never comes at it like, well, I was diagnosed with some somewhat mild gender dysphoria, and there's a way for me to sort of treat it without going through the expensive and invasive process of surgery, and I'd rather go about it like that. Like, if he kind of came at it like that, I think more people would sort of understand it. But he seems very defensive about, transitioning not even needing to be a part of being transgender at all. He seems to want to be able to say he's a transgendered person without actually being transgendered.
Well, again, you can be transgender without transitioning.
Well, yeah,
Like
but
I said, it's mainly And like you said, it does seem very convenient given everything that was going on around the time they started kind of easing into this transgender identity. Like instead of just dealing with the fact that you're attracted to people that aren't attracted to you back, it's easier to just say, well, I'm transgender, so technically I'm a woman, which means you should want to be with me.
I think that is a somewhat common way of dealing with it. Of people who are not transgendered but want to, but seem to take up that torch. I guess more what I was sort of harping on was that, as far as I know, Jerry has no official diagnosis and hasn't actually attempted at any point to even meet with a doctor. You know, um,
I don't know. I know they hadn't seen a doctor during the entire time I had been in their life. As for what they've done over the past couple years we've been out of touch, I have no clue.
uh, yeah, skirting through the thread here, it does seem like he's supposedly beginning the transition now. Uh, it seems to be a Tumblr post where he says that he has an appointment on the 20th for an HRT assessment. Obviously, that's an incredibly early aspect of it. Um, but once more, it feels so out of place to self-diagnosis is always kind of a shitty thing. It's very dangerous, I find, and I think it gives a lot of people the wrong impression. So like when you come out as trans, I feel like it's very important to actually like go to a doctor and discuss it with them, and maybe like I obviously don't know the ins and outs of getting diagnosed as transgendered or with gender dysphoria, but I would assume you'd want to be pretty certain of it before you talked about any of this stuff. Whereas Jerry has always sort of approached the subject with the same certainty that someone who like doesn't have an arm would approach being an amputee. Like it's almost self-evident. Of course I'm an amputee. Like of course I only have one arm. Where else? Where did the other arm go? Like of course
Well,
I'm
for
I'm transgendered. Like why wouldn't I be? Rather than speaking to a doctor about it, seeing if like do you have the same symptoms? Like it's a very almost vain way to approach mental illness.
well, for a lot of trans people, it really is as evident as someone not having an arm being an amputee, and they do like before they're even allowed to transition, they do have to have like several counseling sessions to make sure that that's really what they want to do and how to go about doing it and making sure they're of sound mind and all this other stuff. And I mean, I don't know, like I could psychoanalyze Pete all fucking day long because just I know they had some issues at home growing up. Their dad was kind of a dick, their brother was kind of a dick. So, like they could have been trans this whole time and just now, discovered the possibility, or it could have been a matter of convenience.
It's something that's very hard to say definitively. I think like objectively, but it's one of those things like when you hear him talk, it feels also fake. It feels so forceful. Very little of what Jerry Pete ever says feels genuine to me. Um, and again,
Because it's
like,
not.
yeah, well, I mean, most of it's not. But again, like, speaking as someone who's, like, I knew a ton of trans people in high school, um, because I went to a stupid art school that I bet is a cesspit now. I would love to go back there for a day just to see what it's like. I bet it's like fucking Nukem High there now. Um, but like a lot of them kind of wore it on their sleeves, and we were in high school, so they were kind of too young to really be in transitioning stuff like that. But a lot of them were very picky about it. They didn't like when really talk about the transition. They really just wanted to get to the other side as fast as possible. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
Jerry is in this new classification of people who want to stay almost on the fence. They want to walk the tightrope of between the genders, as almost a bragging rights thing, rather than completing their transition to get to the other end as soon as they can. Whereas I think most people who are actually trans, once they've decided on it, are going to try to move from one edge of the spectrum to the next as quickly as they can. And again, like it's taken him what 4 fucking years to get the ball rolling on this.
Well, like I said, I mean, I'm not trying to speak for trans people in general. I'm just trying to focus on Peet in particular, and just my main hang up throughout all of this is the motivation. Because that would tell me whether or not Peet really is transgender because they're transgender, or if they're transgender because they thought that was the easiest way to get them what they wanted.
I would love to see like a YouTube statistics chart that shows like if he had a huge spike in viewership and subs after coming out.
Oh, I could tell they did. Like around the time they started messing with the puppet's gender, more people started noticing and more people started hanging around. And then shortly after that is when they came out.
That whole thing just sounds creepy to me. Like even the like not really messing with the puppet's gender because who gives a shit. But that there are people who were like didn't care until he started fucking around with his own gender and then started sticking around. It's very dehumanizing. Like sort of like they wanted to watch the freak show. And I know for a fact
Either that,
there were definitely people who looked at it like that, but certainly not in enough numbers to make an impact. There must have been people who knew who he was and just didn't care until they found out he was turning trans, and then suddenly it became like a spectacle to them.
Peet has the uncanny ability. It's like how you were talking earlier. They have the uncanny ability to attract people that are going through a lot of emotional shit, and maybe they're feeling very alone and just needing somebody to look up to or a support system or what have you. And for the most part, Peet is that person.
It's a very odd quality that I've seen a lot of people have on the internet. I don't know what the fuck it is, but there just seem to be a subset of people who like the disease naturally sort of gravitate to. It's like Conqueror's Haki. Just like every 1 in 100 people just has it. It's bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like half the people we talk about on the podcast have it. I feel like I have it. Did you ever want to see a fucking freak show? You should come to the Discord. There's a link to it in the description. That's a hell of a
Okay.
time. Let me tell you. Uh, was there anything else major that I wanted to bring up? I feel like I touched on most everything. There's always like two things that I forget about until the podcast is over. Um, but I guess we can sort of enter sort of a wrap up phase here. Is there anything like really major that you really want to reiterate that maybe you weren't able to do on the finger interviews? Real quick,
Hang on, let me
I'd
go
love.
to their Encyclopedia Dramatica page real quick and just kind of refresh.
Do people call for no good reason finger? Because every time I see the abbreviation of its name, that's what I read it as.
So far, I haven't heard it, but now it's going to be stuck in my head. People just generally call him FNGR.
It's a shitty acronym. Sorry, initials.
Da, 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 da. Let me see. I was there for Down with Molestia. That was fun. I might have one of his RPG Maker games still. The laptop incident. Yeah, the laptop incident I was actually around for, but somehow Pete managed to keep that from me.
The laptop incident, as I recall, was that he had, like, borrowed a friend's laptop and filled it up with child porn as a...
Yep.
It's a little fucked. I've done some
That was another...
I've done some fucked up stuff to people, but, like, I don't think I would do that, just because it would require me to go wading through child porn.
Yeah. Yeah, that's apparently another thing that Pete was good at. All this crazy shit was happening while a lot of us were still in their life, but we didn't know about most of it.
He apparently is very good at compartmentalizing people. If he was able to keep you guys, even though you were presumably just all in the group together, he was able to keep you guys from interacting.
Yep. Like, I tried to talk with Nintendo Cal and get to know her better, but the only thing I can figure is Pete had told her a bunch of shit about me because she just didn't seem interested in talking to me. I have screenshots of Tara talking about sexually assaulting that girl that was homophobic.
Sorry, I had to duck out for a quick second. What was that?
I have screenshots where Tara talked about sexually assaulting that young girl to prove that homosexuals weren't pedophiles.
Well, that sounds absolutely enthralling.
Oh, yeah, definitely was. It was very uncomfortable to listen to.
Are those, like, up on the Kiwi Farmstead or anything like that?
They're not up yet.
Not yet. All right.
But once I can get into my laptop and Gyazo a bunch of shit, I'll be a leaky faucet for a little while.
I'll link those in the description, here in a little bit. But if it's all right with you, is it all right if we wrap up a little bit here?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sorry, I would have liked this to go on a little longer, but I got some stuff I gotta go take care of. But before I leave you here, I have some questions from the Discord. They're all fucking awful, and I want to read them so that way these idiots are immortalized, for their just pure unbridled retardation.
Hit me.
So this first one. Is he named Pete because his heart is that of stone?
Wouldn't surprise me.
And this is the same person rephrasing. Is he named Pete because he is worth that of dirt?
Also wouldn't surprise me.
I don't know why, for some reason, this user decided to speak like he's in Monty Python for this one. Ask her if she knows where Jerry lives.
Last I heard, Jerry was in Nova Scotia, Canada. As for any addresses, I don't know, and I wouldn't be the one to leak those anyway.
Let's see here. Well, there's a lot of other unrelated bullshit, because of course there is. Use it. Wow, our Discord fucking sucks. These questions are awful. Jesus Christ, there's like 10 fucking pages of idiots talking amongst themselves about tampons. For fuck's sake. One user wants to know if you know Hatsune Miku. I hate this fucking podcast. This stupid fucking community. Podcast is over. Forever. It's never coming back. Fuck you people.
I could go through the Kiwi Farms page and find the final message I sent to her.
Sure, that sounds fun. That sounds like a fun note to end on.
Alright. Let me go find that real quick. It's on one of the last few pages. Because I just dumped those in FNGR's Skype group recently, and I guess somebody stuck him up here. Yeah, see, that's actually where I found the different Tumblr responses that people have stuck up here too. Where are those? You there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. Yeah, this one in particular, this isn't my screenshot, but it's one of her Tumblr responses around the time I came out and started talking about her. And this is the one that really pissed me off.
Go ahead.
Anonymous asks, are there any lessons to be gained from the KP shit show? Which was a bit of drama that I wasn't a part of. She says, whenever someone shows up saying, I used to be friends with this YouTuber and I have a lot of stories to tell about how terrible, disturbed, abusive they are, you should always be extremely skeptical about it. Whenever someone says, I've never worked with them, seen their work, etc., but I've heard things about it, you should treat that as, I'm just making shit up. If someone came to me with that kind of qualifier, I would cut them off and say, this is completely useless to me. Especially when the vector they've chosen for those stories are known liars and rumor mongers like Horse News, Chan Sites, or How Not's Brony. These things turn out to be lies so often that nobody should be falling for it anymore. We're all supposed to have learned from this garbage. After so many attempts to defame KP, Dr. Wolf, or myself have turned out to be bullshit, someone showing up with more bullshit just like it shouldn't turn into a news story again. And you should especially refuse to listen to stories about personal lives from former friends. That's little more than he said, she said. You have no idea which party is telling the truth, and everyone views things in a way that inherently favors themselves, blah, 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 chosen narrative. One of the things Aguilar really relies on when he targets me is trying to find the handful of people I've had fallings out with to get their side of the story that had never been told in the first place and isn't even relevant. He knows full well that these people will say anything for validation, which is why he seeks them out. But he never fact-checked these things by talking to people who I'm still on good terms with, of which there are far more. So basically, she's trying to say that I shouldn't be listened to at all because I'm a former friend, and regardless of the fact that they were extremely abusive to me and many other former friends, it's no longer relevant just because it happened a long time ago. Basically, they're trying to discredit me and say that I have no proof or validation or anything like that. Bitch, I got screenshots of conversations.
That's a very common point from people who fuck up, like, irreparably. Like, there's obviously there's a lot of people who, when they fuck up, they can just sort of, cry crocodile tears and it'll be okay. But, some of the stuff is too gruesome to really come back from. And they sort of hide behind, like, well, that was years ago, rather than addressing the actual point.
Exactly, and she didn't deny anything that she was being accused of. She just said that, oh, you shouldn't listen to that because they're a liar. Oh, and clarification, FNGR did not seek me out. He did not track me down. He didn't try to contact me. I reached out to him.
I should mention, yeah, for our interview, Bombastic Blake, friend of the podcast, is the one who reached out to me about setting this interview up. It was not Brittany who came to me sort of eager to spread the bad word about Jerry Peet. Although let me tell you, I sure am.
To be honest, my inner vindictive side hasn't gotten to come out in a while, and I mean, if she had really turned over a new leaf and quit treating people like crap and I never heard anything about her again, I'd still be back in the shadows of her past, just doing my own thing. But since she's decided to treat everybody around her like shit, I might as well give him some validation.
Fantastic. So I guess on that note, it came from the internet, returned after the summer hiatus to fill your time with information on internet weirdos. I'm Dylan. Brittany, do you have anything you want to plug? Anything you got going on, or
Not really.
just
I
returning
don't
to the
have much
void
of an
after
internet
this?
presence.
That's the way to do it. If you want to avoid, if you want to ever escape lol cowdom, that's all you got to do. Just go back to the void.
Exactly.
There's a Discord link in the description. Don't click on it. It's shit. We should have some more episodes for you eventually. I've been working on this Onision episode forever, and by working on it, I mean I spent like 4 days really working on it, and then I spent 3 months playing Yakuza. Uh, so hopefully eventually I'll get back to finishing that at some point. So look forward to that.
I do
Uh,
have one thing coming up soon.
Please go ahead.
I did another Tumblr response on FNGR's channel recently, so that should be coming up soon. And most of the screenshots I have are probably going to be coming from FNGR's Skype group. So be on the lookout for more shit popping up on Kiwi Farms and ED and wherever else.
I'll say this much: the Jerry Peet thread on Kiwi Farms is pretty great. It's active, but it's not like super repetitive, which is a hard thing to get on Kiwi Farms. It's usually you got to get them both if you're getting one, but thankfully the Jerry Peet thread seems to have mellowed out. So that's it. Whatever. Go watch something else, I guess. Go watch Mr. Medicare's video on Jerry Peet, because every time I do anything on this fucking channel, he fucking does the same thing a week later and steals all my thunder. Fuck you, Jim. I love you. Bye.